In this league, everybody starts at 0. Everybody's 0-0. Everybody has a chance to go out there and win the Super Bowl. And if you don't have that motivation every single year to win the AFC and then to win the Super Bowl, then you're in the wrong profession.
They've got good football players, and they're fully loaded on that defensive side. And then we're playing at their place, where it's loud. We've got to make sure that on both sides of the ball that we execute. It's a great challenge.
Explodes, dives, touchdown! A 5-sack performance by the Chiefs. Right side he wants, and a comeback cut. It is caught by Kelsey. Touchdown!
The Chiefs have a new look this year with several fresh faces on both sides of the ball. Those new players have brought a new hunger and a new energy to the squad this season, but the standard remains the same. In fact, today's journey begins where we hope the season will end. State Farm Stadium, the home of Super Bowl 57. We are 2 hours from kickoff. You've waited all year for this very moment. It's finally here. It is time for football in Chiefs Kingdom. Let's do this. My name is Matt McMullen, joined by voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. This is Field Pass, presented by StorageMart. And Mitch, let's go all the way back to April when Patrick Mahomes got the skill position guys on this team together down in Texas to start laying the foundation for what this season would become. Well, finally, we can put that preparation to the test here today.
Has this been the longest? There's no off season anymore. It's the non-playing season. But it feels like the longest non-playing season in my 29 seasons as the voice of the Chiefs. The leadership of Patrick Mahomes, and I'll throw Travis Kelce in there too, and of course Andy Reid, has already been profound in trying to integrate all these new guys that you mentioned into this team. And it does go all the way back to Texas in the Metroplex when Patrick Mahomes had his own unofficial OTAs.
And now I mentioned all the new players on this team, and there's perhaps no position where that's most apparent than wide receiver. There's 6 receivers on the roster here today because Darius Fountain was elevated from the practice squad, but 4 of those receivers have never played a down for the Chiefs before. So guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 2 veterans who have been there and done that and accomplished a lot in this league. Sky Moore, a tremendous rookie out of Western Michigan, second-round draft pick. And then Justin Watson, a veteran who's been around a bit but really earned his spot on this team this year with a tremendous training camp and preseason. What I'm trying to say here is the depth of this group is outstanding. And we haven't had depth like this at wide receiver in quite a while for the Chiefs. And we saw it in the preseason why that's so beneficial. We saw Patrick Mahomes lead 3 drives with the first team offense. Each one of those drives ended in a passing touchdown. And on each possession, 5 different pass catchers caught a pass.
These guys all do different things, and what we've been able to observe over the last several months, everybody brings their skill set to that wide receiver room. And Justin Watson is a guy that has catch radius and the ability with enough speed just to be a longer, taller receiver. To me, it's beneficial in the red zone. Those touchdowns you talked about were in the red zone. The Chiefs were the first-teamers were perfect in the red zone. The last several years, Kansas City has been very average to bad in the red zone. The last 3 years at 14th, 14th, and 20th in the league. This wide receiver room can do different things, and that, to me, bodes well, especially when you get inside the 20 when this turns into arena football.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the red zone because they were hyper-efficient in the preseason in the red zone, and that was one of the main focuses, I think, of the offseason was adding size at wide receiver. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is 6'4", and when you have a guy that tall, it's much easier for Patrick Mahomes to throw a jump ball. He can go up and get it, and we saw the Chiefs trying to use him in that role during training camp and in the preseason, and also getting Jody Fortson back. I know he's not a wide receiver, he's a tight end, but he's basically a wide receiver. He had 2 touchdowns before he got hurt last year, and then 2 touchdowns in the preseason this year in 1 game. I think he's a guy to watch today.
We all know the AFC is going to be highly competitive, and after watching the Bills Thursday night, there's no reason to doubt them. And, of course, the division. The difference for the Chiefs this year, remember, this is going to be a different recipe. If they can just get 5 more possessions in the red zone that were field goals that turn into touchdowns. Do not forget last year, though, Patrick Mahomes led the NFL with 4 red zone turnovers. Those are zeros in the red zone. If you get 20 more points and sprinkle it out over 17 weeks, to me, that's the difference between being 10-7 and 14-3. But to be an effective, or 13-4, to be an effective in the red zone, Matt, you have to attack the entire width of the field. It's 53.6 yards long. Remember, the field is truncated in the red zone. It's only 30 yards long. So you have to attack the width. These wide receivers, Watson, Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you mentioned Fortson and the tight ends, all can attack the width of the field, and don't forget Travis Kelce.
Now, with all these new players, one exciting thing we've talked about is the mystery of what this offense is going to look like. We have watched every single training camp snap, every single OTA snap, every single mini camp snap, and we can't still fully say, hey, this is what the offense is going to look like. We don't entirely know, and if we don't know, the Cardinals definitely do not know what to expect from the Chiefs' offense here today, just because this offense has not gone out there in a regular season game and put things on tape. For years, we had the same kind of group of skill position guys, and they were great, and things worked out with them. But when you know what guys are capable of when you're the defense, you kind of know what to expect a little bit, even though the scheme changes. Well, this year, the Cardinals have no idea what to expect with all these new players, and I wonder how they're going to defend us here today because they don't know what to expect.
That's the genius of Andy Reid. Now, none of that goes away with how the roster has changed. In fact, it just makes him even more creative, I think, in what he can do. Vance Joseph is the defensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals. You'll know him because he was with the Denver Broncos, and he loves to blitz. What's underrated is this Cardinal team was top 4 last year in the National Football League in blitzes. Will they do that today? Or will Vance, as he's thinking, what do the Chiefs have? It'll be curious. He may just come out of the chute and try to attack Patrick Mahomes, and that could lead to some big Chiefs plays.
Well, let's talk about this Cardinals defense a bit because they were pretty good last year, number 11 overall scoring defense in the NFL last year. But if you take a closer look, they really struggled at the end of the season. Over their final 6 games, they allowed an average of 28 points per game. You talked about it a bit, but what stands out to you about this Cardinals defense?
Aggressiveness. They were top 2 in the National Football League with 20 forced fumbles. They were also top 2 in the league in 14 recovered fumbles. I was talking to Coach this week. He had a chart on his desk. They had 9 punch-outs last year. Now, here's what the NFL has become. The enemy gets a 10-plus yard gain, and somebody comes in and punches the ball out. We saw it last year with the Chiefs, both for him and against him. Isaiah Simmons, who played at Olathe North High School, is an impact defender on this Cardinal team. He led the NFL last year with 9 punch-outs. They're aggressive. They'll blitz you. But no play is safe. They're going to try to rip the ball out of you.
They have lots of talent, guys like him, Budda Baker in the secondary, and Zaven Collins also at linebacker. They are banged up right now, though, and some of the guys that we know will not play, defensive back Trayvon Mullen, he is out of this game with a toe injury. J.J. Watt is questionable coming in. He has a calf injury. We'll have an update on him soon, but if he can't go, that's a huge deal for this Cardinals defense. Also, defensive back Byron Murphy, one of their starting corners, he was a late add to the injury report with an illness on Friday. Kind of interesting. So we'll see if he's able to go. He's questionable coming in, but if he can go, you still wonder if there's lingering effects from that here today. And one guy who won't show up on an injury report or anything, but is a huge loss for this defense, is Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones was perhaps the best player on this defense last year, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He's on the Raiders now, so he'll be our problem in a couple of weeks, but at least for today, that's a huge loss for this defense.
Yeah, it's good news, bad news. The good news is no Chandler Jones today. The bad news is we'll see him on Monday Night Football in early October. But the key here is Marcus Golden, the former Missouri Tiger. Last year, 11 sacks. But he has been limited. He had an injury on August the 1st. He hasn't had that many repetitions. There was some doubt, Matt, whether he was going to play, even as late as Tuesday during the week. Then he signed a new contract extension. He's going to play today. He's the guy that has to bring the heat for the Cardinals. That or create heat with some blitzing. As I mentioned, Vance Joseph is very creative in his blitz package as the defensive coordinator of the Cardinals.
Now, switching gears a bit, but sticking with defense, let's talk about our defense a little bit. And there's a lot of new players on this defense as well, but they're young, they're athletic, and they're inexperienced. But we were impressed with what we saw throughout the offseason training program.
I'm really impressed with Boomer Esiason. He might be one of the most because he was talking about the Chiefs' defense today. Nobody's talking about the Chiefs' defense other than you and I.
Yeah.
But we've watched this thing kind of mold together. I'm really excited about watching them turning it loose today.
Yeah.
Now, it's increased speed and increased athleticism, not just with the rookies, but like guys like Justin Reed picked up in the offseason, or Carlos Dunlap, who's the NFL's active leader among defensive linemen with 69 passes defensed. But what I saw too, Matt, was discipline. If you're athletic without discipline, it doesn't work. If you're disciplined without being athletic, It doesn't work. We saw that the last 4 years with the Chiefs. If you check both those boxes, look out. And I'm super excited because, to me, the Chiefs check both those boxes on defense.
Yeah, three things really stood out to me about the young players on this defense. They're athletic, they're intelligent, and they are confident. They meshed really well early on, and they are bought in to this defense. We saw that throughout the offseason training program. We saw it in training camp, and we saw it in the preseason. So I'm very optimistic, like you are, about what this defense can achieve. There may be growing pains at times, but I'm excited for what they can do starting today. Now, of course, it is a pretty tough challenge for them today, facing Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray, one of the most dynamic players in all of football. What makes him so special?
He's creative. We talk about Patrick Mahomes and how creative he can be. Kyler Murray's the same. You know, this could be the A's against the Tigers. What's unique about this game is both of these quarterbacks were drafted by Major League Baseball. Now, are you going, why are you answering your question that way? Is because of what their baseball acumen gives them on the football field. Footwork, arm angles, creativity, understanding where the defenders are. Kyler Murray was a great outfielder for Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, and was the number 8 overall pick by the A's. Everybody thought first round. And everybody thought Mahomes would be a baseball player. You think, well, does that affect this game? Yes, it does, because they play football with all of the assets that made them baseball draftees, and that makes them dangerous, both these guys.
Yeah, Kyler is an electric player, and we saw that last year, but really a tale of two seasons for him last year. So through his first 9 starts, he was incredible. He was Kyler Murray. He was a potential MVP. He accounted for 24 total touchdowns, and the Cardinals went 8-1 in those games. His final 6 starts, though, a total 180. They go 1-5 in those games. He was pressured more than any other quarterback in the NFL, 85 pressures for him. He also just threw 5 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions and really struggled in that postseason loss to the Rams. So $1 million question, how can we make sure we get that latter version of Kyler that we saw last year and not the MVP version today?
Well, let's go back to the good news, bad news thing here. If you're a Cardinal fan, the good news is Kyler Murray is the only quarterback in NFL history to have 70-plus touchdown passes and 20-plus rushing touchdowns in his first 3 seasons. You're like, whoa. He's also just 22-23-1. Last year the difference is, did he have DeAndre Hopkins or did he not? So let's go back to my discipline point about the defense. Against Kyler Murray, you must stay disciplined. You have to attack him, bother him, cover the guys downfield. That's obvious. What is not quite as obvious is protect against the play within a play or the bootleg play, the backside play. I'm the backside defender. The play side's going away from me. My tendency would be, if I'm undisciplined, to chase. That's where Kyler Murray will get you. He'll just peel back the other way and run for 50 yards. This Chiefs defense has to be aggressive and disciplined today against this quarterback.
Well, I'm glad you brought up DeAndre Hopkins, because that's perhaps the major storyline of this game. It's no surprise, we knew this way back in May, but he is suspended. He's not going to play here today, and he's perhaps their best offensive player outside of Kyler Murray. So for more on this Cardinals offense and how they'll look without DeAndre Hopkins here today, I caught up with ESPN's Field Yates earlier this week. By Field Yates from ESPN. And Field, one of the biggest storylines coming into this game is how DeAndre Hopkins won't be out there for the Cardinals. We've known about this for months now. He got suspended back in May. He's missing the first 6 games of the season, and it's truly just a huge loss for this Cardinals offense. An all-pro receiver, one of the best players in all of football. How do you expect them to make up for not having DeAndre Hopkins, and how big of a loss is that for Kyler Murray and this Cardinals offense?
Yeah, his security blanket is not there right now. This is a player in DeAndre Hopkins who at his very best has been amongst the league leaders in targets and catches in a given season. Now, I will point out that last year we did see a slightly different version of DeAndre Hopkins, whose targets dropped to 6.1 per game this past season, as he showed maybe slight signs of physical decline. He's not a bad player by any stretch, but maybe the player that was once amongst the game's very best wide receivers is starting to move a little bit further down that totem pole. That being said, he's a player that Kyler Murray is extremely familiar with and has a great rapport with, so it's going to be an absence. Hollywood Brown, who was acquired via a trade this offseason, may be new to the Cardinals, but he is not new to Kyler Murray, as they played together during their days in Oklahoma, one of the most dynamic quarterback wide receiver duos in the country. And Hollywood Brown's a different player than DeAndre Hopkins. He's got speed for days, one of the fastest receivers in the NFL. Over the past few years, though, while playing in Baltimore, most of his work was done down the field. In Arizona, I expect him to play a more DeAndre Hopkins-like role, which means that some of his damage will be done within 10 or 15 yards of the line of scrimmage. The imperative job for the Chiefs defensive players this week is Hollywood Brown will get his, but do not let him spring free in the open field because he is very fast.
Yeah, we saw that when he was on the Ravens last year, early in the season, had a big touchdown deep down the field that helped the Ravens get back into that game. So we'll see how the receivers kind of work out here early on with no DeAndre Hopkins in the fold for Kyler Murray. I want to ask you about one more player as well, a guy who could be the focal point, I think, of this offense, and that's James Conner at tailback. He kind of shared the load with Chase Edmonds last year. Edmonds is now a Miami Dolphin. So with him having kind of that full role back there in the backfield, what are you expecting from him this year after he scored 18 touchdowns in 2021?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to match that number because it's hard for any player to match that number from one year to the next. But James Conner last year, more by necessity than design, became the go-to back for Arizona when Edmonds missed some time late in the season. Was not a particularly efficient runner, James Conner, last year, as he averaged less than 4 yards per carry, but he was great in the passing game, and he was a hammerhead at the goal line for the Cardinals offense. So the Chiefs know that when the Cardinals get within 5 yards of the end zone, Kyler Murray can run it, but James Conner can run it as well. I think the test will be in the passing game because it's an area that James Conner is very, very good at. And in the middle of the field, Chiefs linebackers are going to be responsible for a guy that's got soft hands and is good after the catch as well. I will be curious to see how much we see of the backup running backs in Arizona today. Daryl Williams, a guy who obviously Chiefs fans are very familiar with, might be in line for some work behind James Conner.
Yeah, certainly lots of good players on this Arizona offense. It's a great test, I think, for a very young but exciting Chiefs defense here today. Field, awesome stuff, man. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, great stuff there from Field Yates.
Former Chiefs employee.
Yeah, he sure was. And the nicest guy on planet Earth.
Yeah,
love catching up with him.
Yep.
And always roots for us, which I appreciate. So thank you, Field Yates, for joining the show here today. I want to get your thoughts on that too, though. Not having DeAndre Hopkins is a huge, huge deal for this Cardinals offense.
Everybody in the NFL wants to know what Patrick Mahomes is going to do without Tyreek Hill. Another question would be, what is Kyler Murray going to do without DeAndre Hopkins? The difference has been glaring, especially last year. With DeAndre Hopkins, the Cardinals averaged 30 points a game. That was 10 games. Without him in 8 games, they averaged 20. Last year, the completion percentage for Kyler Murray without DeAndre Hopkins was 51%. So it has been, he has to prove, Murray does, without DeAndre Hopkins, where's he going to go and can he be efficient and effective? Because so far, at least in recent history, he has not been able to do that.
And if you're looking for guys to fill that void, if you're the Cardinals, on Wednesday you're thinking maybe Rondelle Moore can be that guy. Second-year player, really trying to have a bigger role on offense this year. But he hurt his hamstring on Friday. He's out. He's not going to play in this game. That's a huge loss as well.
I loved him at Purdue. And I thought it was a great draft pick by them because he's like a McCole Hardman, very much like McCole Hardman. Fast. Last year, half of his targets were screens. Okay, so think about flip passes or screens around the line of scrimmage and then speed make you miss. That is Rondelle Moore. Him being gone today is a bigger deal than people think because the linebackers of the Chiefs are under a lot of pressure. That is one less thing they have to worry about. And no disrespect to the guys they brought up from the practice squad, including former Chief Andre Bocelli, but they're not Rondelle Moore and they're not a McCole Hardman type.
We'll have the inactives here in about 1 minute, so we're waiting on that. We'll get some news on who is going to play for the Cardinals in this game. One guy we do know who will play is Hollywood Brown, and the field talked about him a bit. College teammates with Kyler Murray, but this is their first time together in a regular season NFL game. What are you expecting from Hollywood Brown here today?
Well, first of all, this franchise knew that DeAndre Hopkins was going to be suspended. They had to do something on draft night. Think about where the Chiefs were in, 2019 when they drafted McCole Hardman. That's where the Cardinals were in this draft. So they made a trade with the Ravens. Don't you know that Kyler Murray went into their front office and said, bring me Hollywood Brown, because they want to recreate what they did at Oklahoma, which was magical when you look at their numbers at OU. Hollywood Brown has played against the Chiefs. He's played against them several times. Last year, 113 yards on 7 catches. He's a deep threat. And yes, the Chiefs will have to account for Marquise Hollywood Brown.
As I mentioned on the interview, we saw Hollywood last year beat us deep down the field with the Ravens last year, and the Ravens got back in that game largely because of that play. All right, it's 11:55 Pacific time, so hopefully we'll have the inactives here any second. But briefly, I want to ask you about James Conner as well. Field talked about him too. 18 touchdowns last year when he was sharing the load at running back. Daryl Williams, old friend, is here now with him. But what are you expecting from Connor here today in this season?
I respect him. First of all, again, a great story. Overcame 13 chemotherapy treatments and beat cancer, right? We remember him as a grinding out runner for the Steelers. He'll do the same thing here. When they get in the red zone, look for Connor to get it. Last year he had 28 carries inside the 10-yard line, Matt. That was one of the tops in the National Football League. 15 rushing touchdowns. 15. You can't overlook that. You have to tackle James Conner. He will break tackles. You know, Benjamin brings a speed back to them, and we know what D-Will can do. D-Will's also a grinder because he did that for the Chiefs. So you have to respect these running backs for the Cardinals, even though you maybe didn't pick them in your fantasy league.
Now, as we wait on inactives, let's go over the names that we're watching here for Arizona. The 3 guys that we know are not going to play, mentioned him earlier, Trayvon Mullen at corner, wide receiver Rondelle Moore, we just talked about him, and also reserve offensive lineman Cody Ford. Those guys are not going to play. They have 4 players listed as questionable coming in. Defensive lineman J.J. Watt, we know about that with the calf injury. Tight end Zach Ertz, also with a calf injury. Corner Byron Murphy, I mentioned him earlier because he was sick on Friday. And then offensive lineman Justin Pugh, one of their starting guards. He has a neck injury. That's never good. They're banged up right now coming into this game, even if some of those guys play.
They also have had some unfortunate circumstances. You know, this isn't week 10. This is week 1. I mean, we could be talking like the Chiefs in week 10 about, but I don't know why week 1 the Cardinals are in this spot. Plus, they had Jeff Gladney, former TCU cornerback, who was killed in a car accident, tragic mishap in the Metroplex this summer. And then former Chief Antonio Hamilton burns his foot in a cooking accident at home. He would be probably starting today for them. It's just they've gone through a lot here. And even when they re-signed or extended Kyler Murray, it was the clause about do your homework, right? And supposedly that came from the Bidwell family, the ownership group, and then that turned into a big story. There's just been a lot going on with this Cardinal franchise, more than should be in week 1.
Yeah. Well, and the good news for the Chiefs on that front is nothing really is going on. And normally this time we're waiting for inactives because we want to know, is so-and-so going to play for the Chiefs today? There was no injury designations this week for the Chiefs. Everyone is available as far as we know, unless there's been a setback in the last 24 hours. But you really don't ever see that, even in week 1, having everyone healthy. So we'll see what happens with that. But exciting to have all of the Chiefs here ready to go.
Don't overlook the way Andy Reid can prepare a football team. 16-3 in September the last 6 years. Why do I say that, Matt? In answer to your observation, is this team prepares itself mentally, emotionally, and physically. It is not an easy training camp that Andy Reid has, but there's a great infrastructure with this franchise, including strength and conditioning. The athletic training staff is the best in the National Football League. They push these guys, they train these guys, but they protect these guys. And don't overlook that. It's easy to take it for granted in the Chiefs' kingdom.
So we've got the inactives. We've got them. So for the Cardinals, let's see. J.J. Watt not going to play. J.J. Watt is out of today's game. That is massive news. And also Justin Pugh at starting guard. He is not going to play in this game. Some big news there.
That puts them down 2 guards at the left guard position because Ford was backing up. And that's just interesting because they had to sign guys off practice squad. They picked up Max Garcia last night off the New York Giants practice squad. Maybe he'll play today. But they've got to patch some things together for the Cardinals. Again, it looks like a mid-season or a 3/4 of the way season injury report inactive for them.
And here's our inactives. We'll see how good I am with the numbers here. You can help me. We've got Ronald Jones, number 2. Number 12, Shane Buechele. Number 59, Joshua Kando. Number 75, Darian Kennard. Number 82, Darius Fountain. And number 94, Malik Herring.
Okay.
Those are the Chiefs' inactives here today. No big surprises. No one is injured. No one's hurt. No starters are out. And that's what you want this time of year.
And don't read too much into the Ronald Jones being inactive. There's 5 running backs on this team. All 5 are not going to be active unless they're 4-core special teamers. So don't read too much into that because next week, Thursday night, Rojo may be up and somebody else may be down.
Big question for you. Are you ready?
Oh, man. I'm so ready. I'm going to start the radio broadcast this way. Because doesn't this feel like what's going on at Kansas Speedway right now or what I saw in the IndyCar race in Iowa? All the cars are bunched up. They're coming around turn 4, and the green flag drops. And it's just this roar across the line. But to your point as you began the show, this year the starting line, just like a NASCAR race or IndyCar race, is also the finish line. because the finish line of this season will be right here on this field in February.
What better way to start the season than where hopefully we will end the season in 5 months. For Mitch Holthus, I'm Matt McMullen. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Let's go get a victory.